Hi friends, I'm your host Christine Hollino and welcome to Making Things Fun, Cool, and Sexy, where we explore the awesome world of manufacturing by interviewing and promoting American manufacturers to help localize the supply chain and to create more jobs for our country. I drop episodes every Thursday and I switch off from interviewing a manufacturer, then taking the next week to dive into the subject further so that I can learn more about the industry and share it with all of you too. Today, I have my first guest from the East Coast, Sam Gatley. He's the Director of Operations of the COMET program at the New Jersey Innovation Institute. They're doing awesome things over there for workforce development. Let's get into the interview now. Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're my first East Coast interview, and you're doing amazing things over there in New Jersey, educating the next generation on innovation through manufacturing. And you and I, we met at the largest 3D printing conference here in the States, Rapid, when I was working the Women in 3D Printing booth. So it was a pleasure meeting you there, and I'm so glad that we're finally able to get this podcast launched, having you on the show. And, you know, we both share the belief that 3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing, will be making a huge impact in advanced manufacturing and in manufacturing in general in the future and already now. We also agree that we need to get the next generation to get on board to be interested in advanced manufacturing so that we could stay competitive in this industry in our country. So first off, how did you get into manufacturing?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. It was not something I ever really imagined doing. I just kind of fell into it. Took one tactical opportunity after another. I actually got my master's in public policy. I was studying science and technology public policy, looking at how America can stay competitive in all sorts of different areas. Was probably on my way to go work in DC at a think tank and realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And I was living at home at the time, and my dad was actually working on a project developing a multispectral camera, a handheld version to do crime scene analysis. And he just heard about this really new cool technology called 3D printing. And he came home with an Ultimaker 2, and I watched him struggle with it for about a week. And I said, you know what? Took a few CAD classes in college. I got the basics here. Let me take a swing at it. And one thing led to another, and I got an offer to actually go work at the university as a additive manufacturing technician. And 8 years later, I'm running a workforce development center out here in Jersey.
Oh, wow. Wait, so you started off as a technician?
I did, yeah. I really started from the ground up, taught myself how to use Tinkercad because it was free. And so I was building things from blocks the way that we actually train children how to use CAD now. Was able to build some pretty cool things for that DOJ grant with the multispectral camera. Ended up getting an opportunity where a lot of the funding in the lab was actually with the US Army, and they were looking at teaching people how to use additive manufacturing because it's such an emergent new technology that it wasn't really a core part of any curriculums. And so I was given an opportunity to actually run an internship training all sorts of different people in 3D printing. That first summer we had, I think, a chemistry major, a computer science major, industrial design, and a couple mechanical engineers. And it's not that long ago, but back in 2016, 3D printing actually wasn't even a core part of any of their curriculums. So it was the first time they got exposed to it in college.
Really? Wow. And can you explain to us a little bit about what the COMET program is at the New Jersey Institute of Tech?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you kind of froze there for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Can you explain what the COMET program is at the New Jersey Institute of Technology?
Absolutely. So it's kind of an evolution of that internship. So 8 years ago, I ran an internship in a lab on campus, and it kind of did well enough and grew to the point where in 2019, we had 15 students as part of that internship. COVID kind of derailed everything. The whole theory behind the internship was collaborative work and really being together in a lab. Wasn't really possible for a few years, but in the meantime, I was talking to some of our sponsors at the US Army, specifically Picatinny Arsenal out here in West Jersey, and we had the idea to build a whole new facility focused on advanced manufacturing. So COMET is a public-private partnership between NJIT, NJII, the New Jersey Innovation Institute, and DevCom Armament Center, Development Command, part of the U.S. Army's Future Command. It's about 18,000 square feet. It's a mixed-use facility where we have small event space, co-working space. People have kind of joked that it's a little bit like WeWorks for defense. But the real core is manufacturing training. So we have about 14,000 square feet of advanced manufacturing shop floor. We've got metal 3D printing, polymer, electronic 3D printing, which I think is a really cool part of the industry that's really coming of age, as well as some traditional subtractive manufacturing, 5-axis CNC machining, all sorts of really cool stuff like that. And then we also think that in order to really learn about manufacturing, you need to pay attention to all the knock-on technologies like machine learning, computer science in general. We even talk about business and marketing as part of what we do. It's really an innovation hub more than anything else.
Yeah, we need all of that in manufacturing, right? Like, you need to understand the whole ecosystem to make it work. And I saw on LinkedIn that you guys recently acquired a metal 3D printer by Stratasys. I know it's in the millions. Roughly how much have you guys spent on equipment, on all the tooling, all the tools, all the machinery in your lab?
Yeah, so we are lucky enough that at least some of the equipment is, if not consigned, it's actually given at a pretty deep discount, because one of the things that we're doing, the Army describes it as try before you buy, both for the people and for the equipment. It can take a very long time to hire people in the government, and so while they're waiting to get the paperwork in order, we kind of train people and warm base them, they call it, and make sure that they're worth the commitment. And the same thing goes for the equipment. And so some of the OEMs have actually donated some equipment. So Speed 3D is a Australian metal 3D printing company. They're about to consign some equipment to the space. But if we talk about the actual market value of all the equipment, I guess we're probably well north of $5 million at this point.
Wow, that's incredible. So any of your students are very lucky to be able to have hands-on experience with that.
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of joke that part of what I'm building is what I wish I had when I was 20 years old. That, I look back at how much experiential learning really worked for me, and when I didn't have that hands-on experience, I kind of, didn't follow through. I started as a mechanical engineering major when I was 18, actually, and I didn't finish that degree. I ended up getting a degree in anthropology. Funny enough, now I run a manufacturing center, and I think that if I'd had opportunities like this to really get my hands on the machines and make things and apply the theory that I was learning in class into practice, I think that would have changed my career. Maybe not for the better. I'm pretty happy with how things are now, but I try to give those opportunities to the students while they're in college.
Yeah, but that's life, right? It takes you on weird turns, and then when you're where you're at, everything makes sense. Like,
Absolutely.
For me to leave Hollywood to where I'm at now, I'm like, how did I even get here? But I love where I'm at now, and like getting to talk to people like you to help influence and inspire the next generation about manufacturing really just lights up my heart. So this is so good. So we're so happy that you made the career change and now you're here and creating this awesome program for students to learn about manufacturing. And earlier you mentioned that you had CNCs as well on top of 3D printers. Do the students get to see what like the old school conventional way of manufacturing versus 3D printing? Like, do they get to see that?
Yeah, absolutely. We think it's important not just to excite them with the new shiny technology, but to kind of show them the path of how things got to where they are today. And also, when we first were looking at additive manufacturing, when I got into the industry about 8 years ago, there was this idea that everything should be printed. And that really doesn't make sense, right? So I noticed you used the term advanced manufacturing earlier. That's really what we started to talk about. Cut when it makes sense, print when it makes sense, some sort of hybrid approach. One of the CNC machines we're about to get is actually the Philips hybrid, where they've taken a Haas UMC 750, so giant 5-axis CNC machine, and in the same build envelope, they actually have a Meltio 3D print head, so a wire-fed metal 3D printer. And so in the same build volume, you can cut and then add new material, polish, cut, add, and really make
No,
geometries that you can never make with one device.
wow. I need to look into that. Like we'll talk
Absolutely.
more offline about that because, as you know, I'm running my family's machine shop.
Mhm.
We have some 5-axis as well. When I first learned about additive manufacturing, 3D printing, I really wanted a printer. And then I realized that it's a completely different learning curve. Like we would have to hire a different team basically to run these printers. So we're not quite there yet, even though I have such a big love for it. Right now, we're supporting with like post processing of, printed parts need any fine tuning. We're there to make those adjustments. But to get into 3D printing, it would be a completely different department we would have to create for that. So
Absolutely. It really does take a different way of thinking. In fact, shout out to the Barnes Group. We hosted them at COMET this summer for a design for additive manufacturing course. A lot of times people will buy 3D printers and just simply use them the way that they would have used their subtractive machining. And that can work, right? You can figure it out, but really thinking through what the advantages of printing, what the new capabilities are, and when to do each different process is really vital. And so, we were talking earlier about how not only do we teach you how to use the machines, but kind of the whole ecosystem. I think that design for manufacturing, design for additive manufacturing way of thinking is a really important thing to teach and to incorporate into your business.
yeah, I totally agree. And uh, when these students get to learn at an earlier age, there's so much room for growth right now. There's so much to learn in additive manufacturing, in different advanced manufacturing technologies. So really excited to see where the future holds for the future generation, but it actually starts in high school or even middle school of like teaching them what is out there. I recently spoke at a high school and I brought in both machined parts and 3D printed parts, and they were just so amazed by it. And then when I shared what industries we get to support, it sounds so fun, cool, and sexy to them. And then it like lights up a fire inside of them, right? But they don't know what they don't know. So that's why I think raising awareness about manufacturing is very, very vital and important right now.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that we really want to focus on at COMET next. We had to get our feet underneath us, start with the undergraduate level internships, but we really want to address workforce development at every level. And I think getting people interested at an early age is really vital. Before I was in this career, I was actually a high school basketball and track and field coach. And I was the head JV coach at my old high school. And, I really considered what I was doing, training people for the next step. And I think getting people interested, teaching them some fundamentals, but really more than teaching them, engaging with them and getting them energized about it is really important. We've been talking to First Robotics, another kind of organization that I wish I'd had access to when I was a kid. But about half of our interns this summer were former First Robotics competitors, helping out with the local teams where some of the high schools have really great resources and some of them really don't, and leveling that playing field, helping the less fortunate school districts, but then even reaching back and talking to younger kids. The school that I went to and that I used to coach at, the third graders actually teamed up with the juniors about 6 years ago and petitioned the school to start an elementary school makerspace. And so the third graders run and maintain about a dozen Ultimakers. And, I joke that if you can play Minecraft, you can probably use a 3D printer, right? These
Yes.
kids don't know what's hard. And sometimes if you just put the opportunities in front of them, they just embrace them.
Oh, that is so incredible. That is so awesome. So how can students get into a program like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the nice things, you'll notice that I was talking about how COMET is a public-private partnership between NJIT, NJII, and Picatinny. NJII is an offshoot of the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and since NJII actually holds the lease here, I have the green light to work with whatever organizations I want. It isn't locked down just NJIT students by any means. So last summer we had 20 interns. They were from 10 different universities all over the country. For the most part, you probably have to be in this region. one of the limitations of this model is it really can only reach people who can physically get to my center, because the whole theory on the workforce development is experiential, hands-on learning. I can tell you about 3D printers all I want until I'm blue in the face. Unless you get your hands on it, you really don't understand it and know how to use it. So if you're in the region, or if you want to, talk to me and come to the region, we can help find housing and whatnot. But you just got to reach out. We're actually about to put the job posting for the summer internship for 2024 in about a month. We're looking to grow to 30 students this year. Definitely looking to grow our kind of digital side of things. Last year, a lot of it was focused on hands-on, which is great, but we want to make sure that the people who gravitate towards more of the simulation and modeling and living in the digital space also have an opportunity. The whole idea we have is that not one size fits all. And there's so many opportunities out there and so many places for people to help out industry, their country, their own pocketbook, right? To have a successful, rewarding career, that we want to put those opportunities in front of the people. And so, we're focusing on undergrads right now, but we also want to have certification training for people that are trying to reskill and change careers. We've been hearing about automation for a while now, and the idea that there's going to be millions of truck drivers that need a new career. I think additive manufacturing would be great for them. And you mentioned the Stratasys equipment earlier. We're about to become a certified Stratasys training center. And so instead of coming for 10 weeks as part of your college career, you would come for just maybe 3 weeks, get a really intensive hands-on crash course on how to use these industrial scale printers, get a certification from the OEM that industry will recognize, and then you can just go out into industry and probably get a job right away. Wow,
that's awesome. I'm sure maybe even some companies would want to send their employees for learning how to use a Stratasys printer as well. So
that and the other ones, right? So I mentioned electronic 3D printing earlier. That's something that I think a lot of people, even in the additive manufacturing industry, don't really know about yet. I look at it as maybe where plastic 3D printing was about 20 years ago, that it's right at the cusp of taking off and becoming this transformative technology. We just took delivery yesterday, actually, of a Dragonfly. So a UV curable resin-based printer that can print circuit boards, essentially. We have some N-scripts, some Volterras. We've got some really cutting-edge equipment in that space, and a 1,000 square foot Class 7 clean room actually to operate in there. And companies, people from the Army are coming to the center to learn how to use those pieces of equipment too. So not just people looking for a career, but people looking to kind of upskill and for professional development and continuing education hours can come to.
Wow, and that's called electronic 3D printing? What was that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually so early stage in that industry that they haven't really nailed down what to call it yet. Nano Dimensions is who sells the Dragonfly, and they're pushing the term AME, Additive Manufactured Electronics. NextFlex is the Manufacturing Innovation Institute, if you've heard of America Makes, it's kind of like them, but focused on what they call flex hybrid electronics. Not everything is necessarily additive, I guess. It gets down to the question of, is screen printing or inkjet printing additive? It's more advanced, right? And I think the more we worry about those fine, picky details, the more we kind of miss the forest for the trees. The idea that in a day, I can design a circuit, print it, and test it, that speeds up the iterative design process so much, and it keeps your information in-house. And then on top of that, you were talking about how important it is to kind of reshore a lot of this manufacturing. Yeah. Right now, most of that electronic fabrication happens in China. There's geopolitical issues around that, but then just simply the time delay. If I've got to ship all the way back and forth across the world, the time, the carbon footprint, it doesn't make as much sense as being able to do it in-house.
Yeah, I totally agree. Wow, I didn't know about this. I have to definitely look into this. Even though I have been to, what was that company you just said? NextFlex, right?
Yeah, NextFlex. They're actually near you. They're in San Jose.
Yeah.
I'm going to be out there in March, actually.
You are? I'll definitely come by and visit, because I was there recently at a manufacturing roundtable, and other manufacturers. I got a tour of it. I thought it was awesome what they were doing. Yeah, sometimes I forget how blessed and lucky I am that I'm here in Silicon Valley, because there's a lot of evolving technologies here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you had mentioned like Fujifilm too, right? Like, are they in 3D printing?
Yeah, well, so that gets back to that question of where do we draw the line? You know, the difference between an inkjet printer and a polyjet printer
Yeah.
that builds up multiple layers and becomes 3D printing. It's kind of how you use it. So Fuji, they don't really build 3D printers for electronics. They build 2D inkjet printers. So think about your desktop printer at home. It's not that different, but instead of color ink, you can put conductive ink into it, and you can print down onto thin plastic film, polyimide, that can withstand pretty high temperatures. So you print down your patterns, you put it into what's called a sintering oven, and it kind of melts the silver nanoparticles in the ink, so it becomes conductive. And all of a sudden, you have a circuit that you printed at home, basically. You can solder integrated circuits and different components into it, and you can have a flex hybrid electronic, is what the people at NextFlex typically call that.
Yeah. Really awesome things. And your students and interns are very lucky to learn from someone like you who knows just such a broad area of manufacturing, right? Yeah, so that's awesome. And since I am an ambassador for Women in 3D Printing, I'm curious, how many female students or applicants do you have versus males?
Yeah, so I think applicant-wise, it's not 50-50. Definitely not. The whole base is definitely skewing a little bit heavy towards the men. But what I found is that the really talented students and the students that are passionate to learn in the way that I want to teach, which is really collaborative based. I don't want people who think I'm the smartest person in the room, everyone should listen to me, and we're just going to do it my way. We had 20 interns last summer, and as much as it was about manufacturing, it really was about teamwork. I joke that the robots we make are a side effect. They're a demonstration that we were successful, and the real deliverable are engineers and interns who can communicate and collaborate. And so of the teams that, of the people who apply that kind of fit that bill, women do great. And we actually had almost 50-50 last year. It was 11 men and 9 women. Very, very equal team in a lot of ways. All sorts of different diversity represented, different ethnic backgrounds, but also different majors. We had 20 interns, 12 different majors. And I think it's really important to get that diversity of thought into the room, because if we just have 20 mechanical engineers, we joke sometimes we're going to get a really capable box, but worrying about the human factors, how it fits into the broader system, is really overlooked. And it not only limits what we make, it limits the educational experience for the interns as well. A lot of times in college, you learn a lot, but you spend 4 years mainly in class with people learning the exact same things you're learning and thinking the same way you are. And then hopefully you get out into industry and you're not in that setting anymore. You're in a really diverse, energized working group if you're lucky, but you got to learn how to talk with different people. And so we really try to do a crash course in that collaborative space. And I find that, if you frame it in kind of an old school manufacturing way, tech heavy, it can be a little male dominated. But as soon as you step back and you think about the applications and you think about the reality of working in an environment like this, everyone really flourishes. And it's just about kind of reframing the expectations.
Yeah. And how do you think both you and I and everyone in this industry, how can we get more students, the next generation, excited about manufacturing?
Yeah, so I guess I think building places like this is part of it. And you're asking how can people get involved. Like I said, you got to be in this region, but the awesome thing is that places like this are popping up all over the country. We've got good colleagues down in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, building something like this at the Harrisburg Science and Tech University. Virginia Tech has something great. Vermont Technical School, Connecticut has an advanced center like this. So I just happen to know the Northeast pretty well. They're popping up everywhere. And my hope is that, having kind of near peers that are going through this will trickle down. It's one thing to hear about your parents and the work they do. it can, no matter what it is, seem boring. My dad was an astronomer that back in his younger days flew around in a cargo jet with a telescope hanging out the side of it, innovating infrared astronomy is kind of the beginning of the industry. I thought it was the most boring thing in the world when I was a kid because it was what my dad did and it was why he wasn't home sometimes. Whereas people that I grew up with that were maybe 5-10 years older than me, if they tell me the cool things they're doing, that kind of engages a little bit more. So we're really trying to hit this whole continuum. And, our hope is that by having these really cool opportunities that college students are engaging with, they're going to go make new innovative things and then engaging with them when they're kids. I went to a Cub Scout event not too long ago and brought some 3D printers, and they were too young to really get the technical talk. The parents were really engaged by that, but they loved the toys that I brought with me and the fact that you could make that. First robotics and things like that give them a competition. I used to coach high school basketball, like I said. A lot of times the kids would only come to school because they got to play a basketball game that day. Well, if instead of playing basketball, the thing that got them super engaged and competitive was making a robot, that's that much closer to a realistic career for most people. Not to say that basketball doesn't provide tons of really unique opportunities and learning lessons, but I think figuring out ways to reach the kids where they are in these more tech-heavy kind of direct link between what they're learning now and the career they might have, I think that's really going to be beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. And like gamify just came to mind because like we kind of make things a little sexier, like robotic competition, right? That kind of gamifies them while they're able to learn as well. So you're incorporating something fun and they get to learn a new skill. So it's really awesome. You've done so much in 8 years already at COMET. Where do you see COMET in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's definitely taken off exponentially. It's been 8 years that I've been at NJIT, and in a lot of ways, we laid the groundwork for COMET the first 5 years I was there. But really, only in the last, more like 2, we took possession of the building April of 2022. And so, it's really grown very quickly. One of the things we're about to start out here is actually a service bureau and a for-profit job shop. Probably. It's something that's still in discussion, but part of our theory on workforce development is giving people real experience. So in college, you learn the fundamentals, you learn a lot about the technology, but it's kind of sandboxed and slightly artificial, right? It's capstone classes and things like that where there's maybe an outside vendor asking for a project. That starts to get there, but this collaborative, interdisciplinary learning experience where there's now going to be customers with deadlines and money on the line and people yelling at you and angry and livelihoods on the line if you don't follow through with what you've said you're going to do, that really is what I think students need to learn. A lot of times they learn that on the job, and that can be very painful for both the employer and the students. And so what we're imagining is almost like a post-bachelor's position for people where the stakes are real, but we understand that they're still learning. So we're going to do a little bit more hand-holding, but we are going to, actually bring in real jobs. So 5 years from now, my hope is that we have a continuous pipeline of students coming in, that a lot of our staff members are actually former interns of ours. Right now, 3 of my staff members here out at COMET were former interns. So we've kind of turned the workforce development effort in on itself. I'm hoping that I'm up to maybe 20 staff members here, and at least half of them are former products of the workforce development effort, but that we also have, 5 years from now, probably hopefully about 200 interns out in industry doing great things, some at the Army base, but some making all sorts of different things. One of the really interesting things that I've found is that by putting these opportunities in front of students, it really opens up their imagination. We have one student in particular right now. She's very strongly considering going and working at Picatinny Arsenal making munitions, but she's also considering the career that she'd always imagined up until about a year ago, which was working in the beauty industry, making innovations in, she's an industrial designer, and she came up with some interesting idea about kind of like detachable fingernails and stuff so that you could have the long fancy fingernails sometimes, but you didn't have to live with them 24/7. The fact that she genuinely doesn't know where she wants her career to go, either making weapons or making that. I just think that's so cool that she has that option now.
Yeah. I mean, we need innovation in every industry, right? So you could learn engineering here, and then you could take it somewhere else and be extremely successful. There's no one path to success, right? You take things you learn here and there, and then you become a success. And so this comes up to, the end of our podcast, and I always like to end with this question is, and especially because right now we're speaking to students in the next generation, and I want to share stories of failures and successes, right? I know even when, I can't even say when I was young, like even several years ago, before I got into personal growth, I always thought that people were successful because they were lucky, like everything was just given to them. But the reality is these people failed in order to become successful. So can you share an example of how you have dealt with a failure and you were able to spin it around?
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier that I started as a mechanical engineer and I did not finish that degree. It's kind of funny that now I teach college students about engineering because I started college as a sophomore. Actually, I'd been a pretty precocious high school student. I had an entire year's worth of AP credits coming in. And for whatever reason, 18-year-old Sam and mechanical engineering just didn't really click. And I ended up kind of floundering around in college. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree. I switched majors a half dozen times. I kind of limped out of college. At the time, I was coaching high school sports. And when I went to talk to the career services office at RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology, where I went to school, they actually, I asked them, what do you think I can do with this resume and this new degree I have? And they said, have you ever thought about being a camp counselor? Nothing against camp counseling, but, I realized at that point, geez, I need to kind of take ownership of my career if I want to do anything else. At the time, I was super into just kind of watching punditry around politics on TV. And I figured, why not? Let's get a master's in public policy. A lot of maturation happened over my 20s. By the time I was graduating with my master's in public policy, I was able to take advantage of the next opportunity that was placed in front of me. Looking back, I had tons of opportunities that if I'd taken the bull by the horns, my career could be completely different and my life would be completely different. I'm kind of happy that whether it's patience or just kind of immaturity, it led me to not take an advantage of any of the opportunities until that last one that came across. But, charting a course from when I was 18 to here, there's no way I would have imagined this career. And my experience in all the different majors I took, coaching, everything I went through really combined to building the curriculum in the center that I'm running now. And so I wouldn't change a thing, but there's no way you can be forward thinking and get here. So, I sometimes joke with my colleagues that there's a lot of different people in the world, but there's kind of two different classes. There's the people who can have that kind of strategic forward vision, and there's the people who react tactically. One of my old bosses is a physics professor at NJIT, and he knew he wanted to be a physicist when he was 8 years old. Me and my dad, we were talking to him. My dad is also a physics professor at NJIT. He had no idea he wanted to be a physicist until he was 20-something, and he had, been considering being a professional bridge player. And so I think that whether it's failure or just kind of missing opportunities or just life experience, just keep learning, right? Whatever's happened is going to combine into a really unique person, and that person is going to be able to offer things that no one else can. And finding how you can apply your unique mindset and really apply leverage, that's when you end up making a difference and really finding a satisfying, happy career.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, we are extremely grateful that your life turned back around, went through all those hoops, 8 years of college, and to finally get here, because you're making a huge impact for the next generation. You're making a huge impact in advanced manufacturing, and we need more people like you in this industry. So thank you so much for everything that you do, Sam. Thanks again for being my first East Coast interview. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you in San Jose in March.
Yes,
maybe. And
definitely.
same to you. I think that the difference you're making, I mean, like you said, getting people engaged and getting the future generation kind of educated on the opportunities. It's not just important, it's rewarding and fun, but it really is important too.
Yes, it's vital for our industry. It totally is.
Absolutely.
Have an
Right.
amazing week.
Thank you.